I don't know about you, but I do experience a lot of sort of stressors in my life or things that make me feel, and the feeling is like, tension and tightness, um, that, you know, I have a bit of a pit in my stomach that just doesn't feel good, right? And these stressors, I think, most often are made up stressors. Let me explain what I'm talking about here, right? I think a huge chunk of how we view about the world and what we feel about the world is often put onto us by other people, um, that are not necessarily in our same position and don't necessarily understand the same view that we view, or have the same idea of how things are working out as we do. And so there's stressors that are put on to us that make us don't necessarily, just it creates tension in, at least in my life. I sort of feel like that. And some of it's the other ego that's going on in my life, right? The alter ego that's going on like me putting on some of these particular stressors where I'm thinking about the world that I should be ahead, or, that that I'm the problem, like all the basic stuff that we think about as human beings. And, the truth is much of that is made up. And if you simply change your mind and you change the world, how you think about the world, those stressors kind of disappear and you don't feel that way. And what it often takes for most of us, um, is to have some sort of crisis that goes on in our life. Like, it's very hard to convince somebody that this is true. It's very hard to have a conversation with somebody and rationalize them through this, to say, hey, wait a minute, if you just take a step back just a little bit, then everything will be fine, right? And yes, instead of going at 110% or 100% of where you're sort of capable at and having that at a prolonged effort, you can go at 95%, and it would be much more joyous and everybody would be a lot more happy. Um, and you wouldn't feel those stressors that you feel right now. And I think it's really, really fascinating to sort of think about this and hear about this. Is a lot of the stuff that we go through is completely made up. And if you just take a step back a little bit, right? And I know that's very hard for anybody that listens to this. They're not going to understand. It's either you've gone through it, um, and you've experienced some sort of change in your life that you recognize what I'm saying, or you haven't, right? Like, you actually have to go through those moments where you say, why am I doing this? Why? What's what's the point of all of these particular things? You go through a major crisis, right? It could be a major crisis could be caused from anything, right? A severe bout of not feeling good. Let's just say that. Maybe it is you have a death in the family or something along those lines where you sort of recalibrate, you rethink about things. But it comes with experience, and experience in often a very negative experience that you go through and you think about. So what I'm suggesting here is that much of the world is not really going to recognize and think about this as I'm suggesting right now, but that's okay, right? on them, and you have to simply walk your walk every day of saying, I am going to do the best I possibly can. And despite the fact that there is, 110%, I can't go like that all the time, and I can go at 95%, and that's fine. And by the way, if you were to be a mechanical engineer and working in a manufacturing plant, they only run manufacturing plants. All the machines only run 100%, right? There's downtime. There's things where they need to fix. They have to do all these kind of things. And I've mentioned that on this channel before, or on this, on in these discussions, that they don't. And it's strange that we have stressors in our lives where we think of ourselves, whether it's put on by ourselves or other people, that we think of ourselves so we have to run at 110%, because that's just not what the world does, and not what machines do, right? And as people, at least in most of the domains that I'd sort of work in, um, there's an expectation to do that all the time, or I'm part of. There's expectations to be doing really well, and so how do you do this, right? How do you take a step back and feel okay? I think a lot of it is just self-forgiveness. Huge part of it is realizing that you're not good enough. Um, Another big component, right? Like just being okay with not being good enough and saying, okay, I didn't get to it today. I'll get to it another day. Um, and it's sort of this repeated being like, just can't do it right now. It's just outside of what I possibly can do. And I'm okay with that. And sort of letting, quote unquote, letting other people down. I know many people understand, but in your mind, you're thinking you're letting other people down. And then another thing that's incredibly important is distancing from other people that are the stressors, right? Like some people are just, they're a big ball of elastic that you can't sort of fix them. They're just they're, they're very tense. And so you just need to distance yourself, whether it's micro distancing, right? Like saying, oh, I got to go out, or, more of the macro sort of longer term stuff, right? Like those kind of things are incredibly important to make sure that you live a healthy life as much as you possibly can, right? And removing some of those things, those problems, so you can live a healthy life. You don't have to be going as fast and as hard as you possibly can all the time. And I know most of you are not going to understand this, right? Like you just don't get it. But it's incredibly important to remember this, that there is a balance. Not a balance, it's not sort of work-life balance or anything like that, but there's a balance of where, like you can only do so much. And if you do more or sort of be hyper vigilant today, it takes away from tomorrow. And so you have to sort of judge what your capabilities are every single day and be okay with what happened every single day. I think it's incredibly important for all of us to internalize this, say, what is it that you do? And just do that. And if you don't get to it, be okay with yourself if you don't get to it. There's nothing you could do about that. You just didn't get to it. And so instead of beating up in your head that you're not good enough, all those signals that you give to yourself, and that you tell yourself, or other people want to tell you, put the sort of message in your brain, just take that step back and throw that stuff out and say, I'm just doing the best I possibly can, little that I have right now. If it's not good enough, tough luck. All right, take care. and have a wonderful day.